Okay, so the next piece is how am I going to recruit applicants? So I've looked at the job I'm hiring for, I've performed an analysis, I've come up with essentially a job ad description with qualifications, and now I've got to find people that might be right for my job. So I can find those from within the firm or outside the firm. If I start with within, well, a lot of times companies start within the firm. So most companies will have some kind of internal communication system or portal where you can search jobs. I know when I was working in auto finance for GM Financial, I found my next job in investor relations through just searching or looking. I would keep up to date on the portal. Um, and so they posted that job internally to try to find an internal candidate, which they did before they went outside of the firm. So that's an example of internally. Why internal? You can go and directly talk to my current managers and see my performance. I mean, that's company records. Not that everyone can view it, but if you were applying for a job internally, you better expect that they're going to talk to your manager and they're going to look at your past performance. Quicker onboarding. I mean, a side thing would be that boosts company morale, that you see that people can move on and move up, but there's a lot less risk. This is someone that that your company has already had experience with. They kind of know what to expect. Externally, some different methods. You could get referrals, advertisements. So, where did I pull that ad? I don't remember, one of the job sites, but advertisements on job sites. You could use an external employment agency. You might have recruiters, career fairs, that's a huge one. So think about, career fairs on campus. Think about corporate sponsors of events. Just, I'm thinking in the sales realm for like sales competitions. So, recently there were a few sales competitions. So there was the CSI one that was here. Well, they were all virtual. And so Love's was the major sponsor for that. And then there was the national competition. And shout out to your classmate, Katie Barnes, because she placed in the top 12. And we don't have all the results for her exact number and UCO's exact number. Also, shout out to Yana Sun. She did amazing as well. But UCO's ranking is going to be really well. We just don't have the numbers yet. But anyway, Gartner was a big sponsor for that. Affleck was a big sponsor. That's how different, that's another way companies, find sources. LinkedIn is huge. There's something within LinkedIn, and I've got a few examples called like LinkedIn Recruiter, Recruiter Lite, or something like that. Websites, all of these different things are ways. So again, LinkedIn. So if we looked at LinkedIn, you can really divide it by, okay, so maybe you are Groupon again, we'll use, because when I was in Illinois, they came to our school and they would hire, not just from our school, but they would hire 60 internal sales reps a year. That's a lot. And so they had an HR college recruiter that's all they worked on. And so if you're hiring all the time, then you need a different product than you're just occasionally hiring. So LinkedIn has things or products for both of those. So yes, if you're hiring occasionally, there's this Recruiter Lite, and I'll let you look at that on your own. and job post. Facebook, you can use Facebook pages. There are companies now that exist just to help you recruit on Facebook. And I'm going to let you go through all of these hyperlinks and not waste your time in the video. You can go through those on your own. But just know that there are tools on Facebook, there are tools on LinkedIn outside of just, the free, obviously you pay for some of these, but it's worth it in a lot of ways. There's an ROI there that I'm sure someone that works for LinkedIn could explain to you. There's an ROI because they let you look at content in a different way, or look at people and search for people in a different way than you and I can with our free accounts. And some of you may have used recruiting on LinkedIn before. Things that are open to us in terms of procedures or tools. You can read through this list and we'll go through some of these. Psychological test. That's going to give you more predictive validity than just a personal interview. But my thing with, all of these things is you're not going to pick one and just use that as your measure. If you do, that's really not smart. You're going to use, especially when you're hiring, let's say someone you want to manage your existing relationships with your customer, you're not going to use one of these things. You're going to use a combination of all of these things. So you're going to use maybe psychological tests and personal interviews. Maybe use a structured interview. So you're going to ask every single candidate the exact same question and then have a scoring system. So kind of like when you're given a rubric, it's actually very much the same. Given a rubric, everyone's asked the same questions, how do they fall on this rubric? So we're giving them a grade. It's consistent. Interviewer skills don't matter as much because it's just asking the questions. And then the issue is obviously it can be limiting and you might miss information that you might want to know. So there's no probing. These are the questions, they answer, that's it. Unstructured, there's not a set format. It's more of a free-flowing conversation. So you may have some guiding questions and then you go from there. Your interviewer has to have really good skills. And interviews may not be consistent from person to person or from candidate to candidate because it's more free-flowing. So you may say something that the other person didn't say. That could be to your advantage or it could be to your detriment. So you've got to think through these. So a lot of times what companies will use is in the beginning when, let's say, there's a recruiter, let's say on campus or virtual now, they're going to use the structured interview and they're going to rate you. And depending how you rate on that, then maybe you would meet with the sales manager. And then they'd use an unstructured interview. So at least there's some kind of consistency initially before you move on to the next. Reference checks. You can read this. They're checking to make sure what you've said is accurate. Physical exams. You're looking for certain physicality or physical ability. And then there are different types of psychological tests. So looking at anything from your mental ability to personality traits. Maybe they give you like the communication style test to see, maybe they're looking for analytical people. Maybe they want, expressive or driver. It depends what they're looking for. So maybe that's a test they employ. Other things, an aptitude test or initial test. I said that the Chally test, which I explained last week, was one. Things you have to think about with tests though is how long have they been used and what's the predictive validity of them. So predictive validity is using the test and then getting results. Do those results, how much do they line up with what happens, what actually happens? How are they designed? How are they administered? Making sure all of those things are proper. So a lot of times you'll use an outside company to do this so that you know that these validity is not a concern. So again, concerns is again, one of several things you use. You're not going to solely use tests. You're not going to you could solely use interviews. But you're probably going to use a combination of these. And lastly, just thinking about things that we cannot discriminate on when we're hiring: race, sex, religion, color, national origin, etc. And there are more and more lawsuits in regards to this because people are not following through. And so you need to be very careful if you're a sales manager and you're interviewing. You also can't discriminate if someone's married or not. So you need to be very careful in the comments you make. So not just in the questions you ask, but also the comments you make. So that is it for recruitment and selection. You also have, they're not really articles. I think I'm just going to post the module on that's on Trailhead and have you complete that. And they're not, they're just answering questions, reading and answering questions, and then one-on-one coaching. So that's it. Have a good day.